Hey everybody, welcome to the STEAM Zone Virtual Edition, featuring science, technology, engineering, arts, agriculture, and math. Now, here's your host, Mr. Paul.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of STEAM Zone Virtual Edition. So excited to have you with us here today. We're going to be talking about something called agriculture. It's part of the A in STEAM. You may be wondering or asking yourself, Mr. Paul, what is agriculture? Well, I'm glad you asked. I've got the definition right here for you. Agriculture is another word for farming. It includes both growing and harvesting crops and raising animals or livestock. So basically what we're trying to say is agriculture is super important to our daily lives. You want to know how important? Let me just list off some of the top things that agriculture provides for our daily lives. We've got rice, cows, pigs, milk, chicken, wheat, soybeans, tomatoes, sugarcane, corn, eggs, potatoes, grapes, cotton, apples, sweet potatoes, bananas, mangoes, sheep, coffee, palm oil, onions, beans, peanuts, olives, almonds, walnuts, peppers, rubber, tea, oranges, cucumbers, yams, peaches, lettuce, chocolate, goat, sunflower seeds, sugar beets, watermelon, buffalo, asparagus, turkey, carrots, duck, coconuts, tangerines, lemons, limes, strawberries, chestnut, hazelnut. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. And we get all of that because of agriculture, because of people who work hard in that industry. So basically what I'm trying to say, if you have had something to eat today, if you are wearing clothes today, you can thank agriculture. So, because agriculture is so important, I think it's very important for us to learn at least a little bit about it. And I thought a great way for us to learn a little bit about agriculture was for us to do our own virtual garden. Let me say that again because I don't think you're excited enough. We're gonna do our own virtual garden. All right, so, but before we get started with that, gardening requires at least a little bit of knowledge about plants. We gotta know a thing or two about them. So I have here a lovely flower, and we're going to go over some of the parts of this plant. So we've got 4 major parts to the plant. The first part we're gonna start with is the roots. Can anybody out there tell me, where are the roots on this plant? Are they up here? No. Are they here? No. What about here? You're right. So these right here, everything underneath the soil, those are the roots of the plant. But what exactly do the roots of a plant do? I'm glad you asked. Come with me and I'll show you. All right, so we're out here now and we're gonna learn a little bit about what the roots of a plant do. So, what I want you to do, if you're watching this at home, I want you to stand up straight. I want you to stand on one leg. All right? So, not too hard. All right, now I want you to close your eyes and try to do it. All right, so that gets a lot harder. We might start wiggling a little bit. We might even fall over. All right, now I want you to stand like this. And I want you to imagine what would happen if someone came and tried to push you over, right? Now if we were standing like this, if we're on one leg and someone comes and tries to push us over, we're probably gonna fall. But if we're standing like this, we're gonna be nice and steady and we're not gonna fall, okay? So that's kind of what roots do for plants, right? They hold them in place, they keep them from falling over, they keep them rooted in the ground, but they also serve a second purpose, and that purpose is when it gets wet, when there's water in the ground, those roots act kind of like a sponge and they soak up all of that water so that the plant can get all of the water that it needs. All right, let's go back inside so we can talk more about roots. Wow, so we learned a lot about roots there. So basically, roots serve two main functions for the plant. One, they keep the plant solid in place. It's kind of like the plant's balance. Secondly, they take all of the nutrients in the soil, water, minerals, and things like that that the plant needs, and they suck it all up. Now, the second part of the plant that we need to talk about is the stem. So, can anybody on here tell me, where is the stem on this plant? Is it down here? No. How about up here? No. What about this? Is this the stem? No. What about here? You got it. That's exactly right. The stem of our plant is right here. So it's going to be the tall part right here in the middle that kind of holds the plant up. Let's go back outside and we can figure out what a stem of a plant does. Oh. Whew. I'm tired. I'm a little bit thirsty. That's nice. So we're out here now to talk about the stem of a plant. And actually, I just gave a perfect illustration of what a stem does. You see this straw that I just used to get some water out of my cup? So that is kind of like the stem of a plant. So we just talked about how roots are kind of like the sponge of the plant. It soaks up that water. Well, if the roots are the sponge, then the stem is the straw. And so the plant sucks that water up the stem, up its straw, and gets that water and the other nutrients that it needs from the soil to things like the flowers and the leaves and stuff like that. All right, let's head back inside. We can talk a little bit more about the stem. All right, so we learned a lot about the stem right there. The stem of a plant is going to do two things. It's going to provide support for that plant to keep it standing upright so it doesn't fall over, but then it's also going to serve like the plant's straw. So it's going to suck all the water that the roots gather up to the leaves and up to the flowers and all things like that. Now, our third thing that we're going to learn about with the plant is the leaf. So, can anybody tell me where on this plant the leaf is? Is it going to be right here? No. What about right here? Is this the leaf? No. So what about this thing down here? Is this the leaf? No, you're right. What about these two things right here? Are these leaves? Yes, that's exactly right. These two things right here are the leaves of this particular plant. Now, to find out what leaves do for plants, let's go take a look back outside and we can learn a little bit about that. All right. So now we're here to talk about our leaves. So what do leaves do for a plant? So they serve two main functions. The first function that a leaf serves is that it's actually kind of like the lungs of the plant, right? So we breathe, we have lungs, we breathe in and out. Plants need to breathe too. They need air just as much as we do, but they don't have lungs like we do. So they use their leaves. Their leaves are out there and they've got little tiny holes that you can't see that absorb some of the air that they need. But also, leaves are kind of like my little sun tanner right here. They gather all the sun for the plant, right? So that's nice. The leaves have a really nice job. They get to provide sun and warmth and energy that those plants need to continue to survive. This is nice. But now, we got to head back inside and talk a little bit more about those leaves. All right, so we learned a lot about the leaves there. Basically, if we were to pick out two functions for the leaves, number one, they're kind of like a solar panel for the plant. It's going to soak up all of that energy from the sun so that the plant can eat and have energy. And secondly, the leaves kind of act like lungs for the plant, right? They help the plant breathe. Even though the plant doesn't breathe like we do, a plant still does need air, and that air comes in through the leaf. Now, our fourth and final part of the plant that we're going to talk about today is the flower. Right there. So the flower, it's going to be very, very important to the plant. Come with me, we'll find out more. All right, so I just demonstrated kind of the main job of a flower. So before, imagine you're a bee and I was the flower. So before, I was kind of hiding behind the bush. I don't know if you could see me or not, but you probably couldn't see me very well. However, I bet you did see me when I came out and I started jumping and waving my arms and stuff like that. So that's what flowers are doing. You know, they're not exactly jumping around, but most flowers are nice bright colors. That way they can attract bees and other pollinators so that those things can go spread pollen and create seeds. And then those seeds help those plants make more and more plants. Let's head back inside and we can talk a little bit more about it. So we learned a lot of really cool stuff about flowers there. They're basically a beacon for the plant, so they can attract things like bees to come and help pollinate it, so that it can create seeds, and then in turn it can create more and more plants. So we've learned a lot about the plants today. Now it's time to actually do some gardening, some planting of our own. All right, so we're going to go outside and I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to get our own virtual garden started. So let's talk about what it's going to take for us to build our very own garden. But first, as I always say, please make sure you get permission from your parents before you do any of this. Okay, so what do you need if you're going to start your own garden? Well, first you need a place to do it, right? So you need a spot that's nice and sunny. It's going to get a lot of sun. My spot is going to get a little bit of shade during the day, but it's only partially shaded. It's not completely shaded. Okay, so we've got our spot. Now what else do we need? Well, you need maybe some tools. You don't have to have tools. It's one of the great things about gardening is you can kind of just use whatever you have. But if you do decide to use some tools, you can get something like a hoe, you can get a shovel. But the most important thing for me is to have some nice gloves and to be wearing clothes that I don't mind getting a little bit dirty, because you are going to get a little bit dirty, but that's the fun part, right? So you need clothes, you need tools, you need a good spot. After that, what else do we need? Well, of course, we need the actual seeds. And so that's going to be entirely up to you as to what you choose. For me, I've got these seeds over here. I'm going to grow some green beans, I'm going to grow some cucumbers, some tomatoes, and some black beans. But you can choose whatever seeds you want to grow. They're not expensive. They're pretty cheap. You can find them at Lowe's or Home Depot or even Walmart, and get some and you can plant them in your backyard. The great thing about seed packets like this is it gives you all the instructions on how, where, and when to plant right here on the back. Just read all of the instructions carefully, and you'll do just fine. Right now, we're not going to be able to plant in my garden. I don't know if you can tell on the picture, but it's a little bit muddy back here today. It's been raining a lot, and so it's just a little bit too wet to plant right now. But what I'm going to do, we come over here, so I'm actually going to use this little planter here. And we're going to temporarily plant my plants in here, and then when it dries up a little bit, then I'm going to take them from here and put them somewhere else. But another note, if you don't have a yard, that is okay. It is perfectly
perfectly okay to garden without having a yard. If you only have like an apartment or something like that, you can use little flower pots like this. Again, you can find these at Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, places like that. You'll need some like this to start your plants, and then you'll need some bigger ones as your plants get bigger. And then the only other thing you'll need after that is something underneath. If you notice there's holes in the bottom of these, you need something underneath to catch that excess water. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually plant my plants in the planter. Okay, I've got some soil here. Natural seed starting mix. Okay, so this is like a good high quality planting soil that's going to get my seeds off to a good start. I'm going to put them in all of these trays, then I'm going to put my seeds in. I'm going to have them all labeled so that I know what all of them are, and then I'm going to water them. All right, and then I'm going to pack down the dirt. You don't want to pack it down too much, but you do want to pack it down a little bit. All right, so just follow those instructions, follow the instructions on the back here, and your plants should turn out just fine. All right, so there you have it. We got some of our seeds planted in the little planters there. If you're doing this at home, remember, always get your parents' permission first. Also, just follow all the instructions on the seed packet. Get your parents' help with that if you need it, as far as how to plant them, when to plant them, and things like that. If you don't have a backyard, like I said, you can just use planters. You're just gonna need to continually put those plants in bigger and bigger pots. And aside from that, hope you have fun and hope that your gardening is successful.
Well, friends, thanks for joining me today. And hey, I want to hear from you. If you liked what you saw, or if you have any questions, or if you have anything else that you want to learn about from me, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. In fact, next week for both of our episodes, I'm going to be reading off some of your input, some of your feedback that we get. We're going to call it Letters to Mr. Paul. So if you have something that you want me to hear, just leave it in the comments below. Send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.